Austin, and beyond. Meet 981fm.com and IR Station.
Nancy, Smokehouse. It's the urban heat. Shout out to Coach Love. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. On the urban heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La 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 La. If you got something on your mind, you can call him, you can hit a line. She the realest, ooh, she the realest. You can tap in, I'll get a business. So empower you, so that you can do every and anything that you want to. It can hear me, Coach Allen, it's time to listen to conversations that's gonna get you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. On the urban heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La 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 La. Coach La 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 La.
What's going on? What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Coach La, with your favorite around the way therapist. I hope you guys are having a beautiful Sunday. It's always a nice time being here at the Urban Heat Studios. You guys know we are radio with a purpose. And I hope you guys have had an opportunity to sit back, kick back, and relax this weekend. So you know that we've been talking about men's mental health awareness because it's the month all dedicated to men's mental health. And this is Men Need Self-Care Part 2. Last week we had my good friend Cuban Mike on, who's also going to be one of the poets at Pole Therapy 12, which is an ode to fatherhood. But tonight, I am super excited. I shot my shot. He was on my chicken list. Shout out to Queen. I got a list of people that I'm scared to talk to. And this next gentleman was on my chicken list. I found him on social media through My Crumble Thoughts and Amanda Shea. Shout out to two of them. And I saw his work and I went and looked him up. And he had a track called Poetic Therapy. And yeah, it was so fire. And I was like, oh my God. I told DJ Wade, I said, listen to this. I was like, I think we found a theme song for pole therapy. So yeah, I want to definitely play that track for you guys. So who is this guy I'm talking about? Well, he's a father. He's a dean of students. So he's in the education field. Starting to see there's some themes going on. Amanda Shea is also in the education field as well. And I also believe Jasmine might be in the education field. So a lot of poets are in the work of helping people. And we also do that through our spoken word. He's a motivational speaker. He's a slam poet. He also helps people get married. He helps people get hitched. I thought that was real interesting. Hopefully he might talk about how he ended up doing that. And he's also been on several shows. One of them is Lexus Verses and Flows. And he's also the co-host of All Black Men Need Therapy. So I want to bring on Chief the Poet. He is my special guest for this evening. So let me bring him on the screen here. Hey, Chief.
What's happening?
What's going on? Great. Actually, I had to turn the volume down because you're so loud.
No doubt. I can turn me down over here if you like.
Yeah, you sound great, though. Okay. I'm like super honored to have you on Conversations with Coach La to sit and just chop it up with me. As I was saying, I've had an opportunity to just sit and just, I want to say absorb is probably the best word. Okay. Absorb and reflect on a lot of the things that you shared. And I thought you would be an excellent guest for this month's show, but also for Pole Therapy that's dedicated to my dad who passed away 6 years ago. So I got really, I got vested into men's mental health, and I have a son who happens to be 18. And just the overall self-care and men taking good care of themselves really changed when I became a mom of a young man. And then my dad passing away. I think we need to just have more conversations and give men their flowers And shout out to the men that are doing great work and doing a good job. Sometimes it gets overshadowed by those that are not doing it. So I want to shout you out for being an amazing dad. Just vicariously watching you through social media. You're very active in your daughter Mia's life. So shout out to you and happy
Yeah,
Father's Day.
appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yes, yes. And then you do a whole podcast with your other brothers about
Yes.
Black men, all Black men needing therapy, which me being a psychotherapist, that was in alignment with a lot of things that I believe too. So I'm hoping to get into all of that. But before we go there, who is Chief? Who's
Well,
not in the bio that I went and created on my own because you didn't send me your bio?
I did, didn't I?
No, you did not.
Damn.
I went and researched you and stalked you and found out what you do.
I mean, it's up there on my website and all that. So I mean, it's there. I swore I sent it to you though. Did you actually? You actually trust some stuff I sent? Maybe whatever. I'm happy I'm here. So how about that? Thank you for having me. We here now.
Tell me in person.
Yeah, we here now. Thank you for having me sincerely, and may your pop rest in peace. I know he's smiling upon all the things you're doing and very proud of you. So that's a dope thing. It's unfortunate that he's going and couldn't see himself, but that man is smiling from ear to ear. I know he is for sure.
Yeah, he was proud of me when he was here, so I can only imagine. He's my guardian angel now, so I feel like when everything goes well, I say a prayer to the man upstairs and say thank you Jesus, thank you God, and then I go thank you Daddy, because I'm like he got the direct line to the big man now,
to the big homie, right? For
yeah,
sure,
that's my guardian angel. So
no,
yeah, so who is Chief?
Chief is literally all the things you mentioned, man. I think you put those in a pocket right there. It says on the bottom of the screen. You put it all in the pocket, and I am all of those things combined. I kind of pride myself on being a well-rounded man. I'm open for a lot of like introspection and self-reflection. So I do all of that and continue to help mold myself, be the best version of myself daily. And it's literally a daily challenge, but I thrive on being balanced and putting all those things together and being able to excel in all those components of who I am. The best part about who I am is a dad, though, for sure.
Yes. There is I don't think I was able to grab the poem of you and your daughter, but y'all got to go look it up. Go follow him, Chief the Poet, on Instagram. He has some great highlights. And then you guys need to be here on Friday, June 28th. He will be here in Boston for Poet Therapy 12. So you guys will get the chance to meet him up close and personal and hear him do his thing. So we usually, once we get a little sense of who you are, I love spoken word. I'm not as, as a fluent or what do I want to say? I'm not as good as you. But, I feel
that's
like
completely subjective.
It is, but I'm a big movie buff, and Love Jones, and she wanted to throw her notebook away. Like she didn't think her poem was that good, and it was like really fabulous, but she was like wanting to burn her notebook. That's how I feel sometimes. I'm like that poet that's like, I love poetry, so I'm gonna create a space to be around poets because I really love you guys, but I don't feel like I'm as good as everybody else.
As artists, I think that's a caveat we all have. I mean, we are our biggest critics, man. I mean, and it's constantly like we find a good poem and people love it, and we feel like we got to outdo that one good poem that we got, and that's just a struggle. It's a struggle that we have, man. But let's just keep pushing that pen, and great things are gonna come, man. Art is art, and we thrive off being a voice for the voiceless.
We really do, and I think poets have been the whole community. It's been like I found my people. It's been very much a big warm hug of love and grace. Like I say this, and every time I do, I get reprimanded. They're like, if you don't cut that out, like you're great, you're awesome. Your work is good. And I think that's just an example of us wanting to be better and do better and push the envelope and perfect our craft. So I know I can be hard on myself, but you'll get a chance to hear some of my stuff.
I just came from the Southern Fried Poetry Slam in Pompano Beach, Florida last week. Spent the week out there, big convention, big poetry festival, and 32 teams from across the country. And you sit back and, we all believe in our talent, but we get around other people and just like, these people are insane. The way their minds work and the way their pen works is just unbelievable. So we all have those internal things, but I mean, once you get on that stage, just do what you do.
Do what you do. There's a poet. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Name is Midnight.
Midnight has been on the team. Midnight is my dude.
Midnight. Oh my goodness. His verbal connections is bananas. I love
Midnight's
Midnight.
my guy.
Yes.
We were on the Connecticut team together for many years.
Yes,
It's
I
funny,
love him.
I was just with Midnight on Tuesday. We sat down and had a writing session on Tuesday this week.
Yes,
If you-
he is someone that I sit and I'm like, his punchlines and the way he just brings these connections and the similes and everything together is amazing to me. His brain.
do you connect with him? I'll make that's an easy gap for me to bridge.
Yes,
Like,
well,
listen,
you gonna be my plug.
listen, I
So
got
he's
you.
he's on my chicken list too, but you have helped me because you've only know how many people have ignored me before you said yes and responded. If I had gave up, I would have never made it to you because none of them responded to me.
All of them who ignored you, holla at me. We're gonna tap back in with them.
Obi didn't respond. You
That's
and,
my
and,
guy.
and Jasmine responded and you responded. And I said
Obi
the
is
same
my
thing
dude.
to her. I was like, you answered me. Thank you.
Obi's my guy, so I can make that happen
with
too.
my 100 followers on Instagram. But you guys know that Pole Therapy's been going on now for goodness, almost 2 years. And it started with me just realizing that folks needed a space. And I thought poetry and spoken word was an awesome outlet medium for folks to grapple with their emotions. So Pole Therapy was me as a psychotherapist talking to my clients about go find open mics, go find poetry, trying to give them spaces where they could go by themselves and not feel like they needed to go with somebody.
Right.
And I was like, open mics, you can just go and just chill and sit by yourself. There'll be other people there too, because sometimes people will be too afraid to go or feeling like they were forced to be a part of something. I'm like, you'll be surprised. You'll hear people talking about all kinds of emotions, and maybe you might want to write too.
Oh yeah.
And then they were like, I don't know what any of those are. And I was like, well, why don't I create my own? Why don't I create my own open mic for people to go to? And that was me really encouraging my clients to practice self-care, which is what tonight's all about, right? Is how do men particularly practice self-care? So for you, I'm gonna tie this into 2 questions because I think therapy is a form of practicing self-care.
For sure.
And a lot of people don't realize that you don't have to have a mental illness to go to therapy. You can just go to therapy as a maintenance, just to have somebody to talk to and just as a release, as a form of self-care. So first question is, what does therapy mean to you? And I'm hoping that in that you can tie in what you do for self-care.
Well, let's say I recently began my therapy journey. I'd say within the past 4 years, maybe. But as far as a licensed therapist, I think the past 2, maybe. So we started the podcast. Shout out to my guys, Bell and Prentice at All Black Men Need Therapy.
You guys got to check out that podcast. It's very good.
You definitely do. We have some pretty intense conversations, and it comes from a real authentic place. It's therapy in the most non-traditional way, I guess, because none of us are therapists. None of us have, therapy degrees or licensures, but what we do have is vulnerability and a knack for being able to, we just have great chemistry amongst each other, and we hold each other accountable, and we respect each other. So we're not afraid to tell each other the hard truths, and because oftentimes we don't know what we don't know. And then when somebody points it out in you, you're like, oh, I never looked at it like that. And a big part of that was being able to hear those perspectives and then apply them to yourself. Because I think that's the greatest part about evolving as a human in general is self-reflecting and acknowledging those things about yourself that you may have been afraid to do so in the past. So my therapy journey started just kind of when you start to learn that you ain't right all the time.
That part.
You know what I'm saying? That you're not right all the time.
If you think you're always right, ooh, that's a sign you need therapy in itself, right? Because that means that you think you're perfect. And none of us are perfect.
Yeah, so we're having a conversation with my buddy. So my daughter was playing basketball back in the day. And I take my boys to go see my daughter play. And she had hurt her hand during the game. And she's playing the game. And she's like, she's holding her hand. And I'm like, you okay? She's like, yeah, I'm okay, Dad. And she ends up finishing the game. And then after the game, we find out she broke her fingers.
Oh, wow.
So I tell the fellas, I'm like, man, Mia, she's a G. She thugged it out. She toughed it out. And he's like, dude, she's 8 or she's 9. Like, why are you so proud of that? I'm like, listen, I didn't make her play. She chose to play. And he's like,
Right.
imagine what that did to her psychologically. And I'm like, and you know, she probably felt pressure to play because her dad's always talking about be tough or whatever. But in that conversation, it was a very, you know, spirited conversation. And at the end of it, he was like, yo, and that's why all Black men need therapy. And I was like, that's it.
Bingo.
I'm
And
like,
you
that's the name
know,
of the podcast.
I definitely, the idea of strength as a Black woman, right? And the fact of where that comes from in terms of like, be strong, endure more pain. It's interesting because in sports, you see that a lot. You see players play sick, you hurt. So it's hard in sports. I think it's part of the endurance and the toughness with sports that often goes along with sports is you keep playing, you play to the end of the game. But I've also seen that in dance, where you get hurt, you keep playing, you know, and you endure pain. We see that with working out, you know, no pain, no gain. So I think there's a certain level of, we know that you almost have to go through some painful things in life, and maybe that is not the worst thing, is to teach her how to be able to endure some pain, but to also be vulnerable after and to be hurt or cry. Like, I think you just need balance.
And that's, again, remember when I started, I told you I pride myself on being like a very well-rounded man. And I think I do a good job at fostering that type of confidence within her, that she knows it's okay to cry, and that, you know, sometimes we got to tough through some things. So it's a good balance. And again, all of my kids have done, they do a pretty good job at like managing their emotions and articulating how they feel. And they're all young. So it's pretty dope to be able to have cultivated that within them at this point.
Now tell me about your kids. Because I know about Mia, but I know
so
there's more than Mia.
I have a girl, and so it's funny when people ask you that. I got like a long story. So it's I have a girl, Mia, and my boys, Major and Storm, are 10. So 13, 10, and 5 are my people, my biological children. Then I have an adopted son who's 21. And I have a set of twins I inherited from a buddy of mine who passed away. So it's a gang of us. You know what I'm saying?
Now, do you have physical custody of all?
Oh, yeah. No, all of them. No. The twins live with their mom, Big Baby. My son, Big Baby. His name is Dave. We call him Big Baby. Big Baby's here with me. And then me and my boys, we split time.
Okay. So you're co-parenting, or are you married?
No. Co-parenting.
Co-parenting. Yeah. Ooh, I was just talking to somebody about blended families and co-parenting and navigating that as a man. And so I've been binge watching The Chi. I don't know how many people watch The Chi, but I haven't really had a chance to watch a lot of television all the time. So I was binge watching The Chi, and I thought it was so interesting. Emmett's evolution as a dad, and his evolution as his father-son relationship with his dad, and just all of the dynamics that they played in him with his blended families, because he has multiple children with different moms. Have you ran into anything that has impacted you as a Black man trying to navigate that might have brought you to therapy?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's been a ton of different times, man. There's been oh my goodness, there's been a ton of different experiences just in general with, you know, the bitter breakup blues is a part of co-parents, and that's always tough to navigate until we finally, you know, make it about the children rather than our disgruntled situations with each other. My kids are biracial, so I've been asked like if I was their coach and not instead of their dad. Like it's been some wild thing. People like random, oh, these are your players? Like, no, are you their coach? Like,
wow,
you can't see my whole face in them. Like,
right?
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, no, people have a lot of gall and audacity these days, but it's been an interesting journey, and there's a variety of different things we could talk about as it pertains to co-parenting and all that good stuff. But you live and you learn, and you process through these things, and then you move out. You come out on the other side happy and pleased. And my kids are well-rounded, empathetic, loving, caring, kind, polite, like awesome humans. And I think at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. I have
agree.
like really good humans as children.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, and that's what we want. It's like I had come across I don't know if we want to call it a meme or a video, and it was talking about you can really take inventory of yourself as a person on whether or not you're a good person or not. Do you leave people better than when you found them? And I think to a certain extent that was so subjective too, because sometimes you simply leaving a person could not necessarily leave them better than when you found them, and you needed to leave, or you for your own good or their good. But I think, in general, you want to add value. You want to add value. You want to lead with
Absolutely.
kindness and love, and if you can do that more times than you hurt someone, because sometimes you can hurt somebody unintentionally, just
Yeah.
simply by telling them no and creating a boundary, they
We
can
all
be
do
hurt,
it. Right.
So I think, the absence of pain, I think, I've been thinking a lot about that as I still grieve my dad 6 years later, that
Mhm.
there's really no way of avoiding pain. And I think we're all trying to avoid being hurt when it's just a human experience. People
Yeah,
are
very much
going,
so.
people
And
are going to leave, things will end. And it's just like, how do you cope with that? How do you navigate that? So,
I think ultimately none of us are taught that.
Mhm.
That is a lesson that we have to learn as we go through it. How many of us were raised to raised to navigate and deal with grief, loss? None of us were really taught that. You learn as you go through it.
You do.
Lean on, but you don't learn that until it happens.
Correct. I think my father, shout out to him again, he attempted to help me to prepare me for this.
Mhm.
He would say things like, I'm not going to be here forever. He would
Right,
tell
like
me to
that.
be grateful. He would tell me to, really value the time and tell people you love them. And he would talk about the loss of his own parents and how he wasn't prepared for it, and that at some point it would happen. I think that was all he could do.
Right.
Of course, he could never completely prepare me.
You can throw the gems out there and let them do, like our job is to fill their toolbox with all the tools they need, and then hopefully they know how to dig the right one out when the time comes. And
that part. My mother used to
that's what you're
say,
doing.
she was giving us a book of knowledge, and at some point you would have to go and read it and try to decipher the chapters out for yourself. So
Yeah.
very true. So when you're thinking about your personal journey, how have you been able to prioritize your self-care and your mental health?
That is a process I'm still trying to navigate through. So one thing we definitely do now is with the podcast, it really helps because, people hear, black men with a podcast, but the first thing they think is like, they bashing women or doing this, that, and the third. We really do some great work on the podcast. Like I can tell you now, I am a different man from when I first started because we really have these conversations and we get to it. So we have a weekly meeting on the podcast that allows us to just vent and get some things off of our chest. Poetry obviously has been monumental in my life. Like what somebody asked me the other day, like what would I do without poetry? And it was kind of like I opened, like I've never thought about that. Like it's not even something that I want to think about. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So writing has been exponentially therapeutic for me. The usual, diving into my kids is a way for me to like take this weight off my shoulders sometime. Just the stereotypical working out, running, lift the weights, that type of stuff kind of gets your mind off of it for a moment. But I have I think for me, what's been super helpful and beneficial in my world is I have a solid core of friends. Like I've had the same friends for 75% of my life. And we have a sincere bond. I have no problem going to any one of them and being like, yo, this is what's on my spirit. I need to bounce this off of you, help me out. And all of them are receptive and they give me great feedback or they just let me vent. And that's been something that a lot of men don't. They have their circles, but they fear the judgment from those circles. I don't have any worries of that whatsoever. So I can be open and honest with my guys and let the rest take care of itself. So
I think that's so important. And I've learned that from working with men, how, camaraderie. That's why, sports teams and playing cards with their buddies and just going to play golf. And, a lot of women don't get that, but that time with their boys is like their self-care. That's like that's the balance.
It's weird because
camaraderie.
Those moments serve as the camaraderie and lighten the load temporarily. But I'm speaking more specifically to having the opportunity to talk about it because we'll mask it. We'll mask it with a good ball game or a round of golf or a night of cards. And for that moment, everything feels good, but we still carrying this stuff. I have outlets where I can really pour into my guys and get it out of my spirit and get some positive feedback on how I should move forward or, how I'm handling or what they see. And it really does make a difference in my world, because a lot of guys have friends they can kick it with, but not ones they can talk to.
Ooh, that's a bar, because I saw something too about being surrounded by a bunch of people and still feeling alone. And I think what you're speaking to is you can have buddies that you hang out with, but y'all ain't really talking about nothing, right? If you start talking about certain things, you get the whole man up, which I really, really despise that. I think man up to me is like, don't cry.
Yep.
And I think the hyper focus on masculinity being like tough and emotionless has just been devastating to my male counterparts. I think that in itself has created a bunch of men who are like soda bottles, right? That they're just being shaken up, and there's nowhere for it to go. There's a piece that you have that basically is Who is Chief, and you talk about your walk as a young man with your brother, your father, and you add so many elements in there. It's one of my favorite pieces that you've done.
Well, thank you.
And to me, that was like almost like it was almost like a journaling in a poem of like really trying to seek identity and understanding of who you are as a person. So how much do you think like the identity and masculinity plays into what we see in terms of the downfall of men's mental health?
A lot of us haven't identified what manhood really means to them, and what we go under the stereotypical notion of what masculinity is or what a man should be. When you identify it for yourself, you find comfort in, like for me, if I'm identifying it, I find comfort. I think being a man or crying and exposing vulnerability is part of being a man. Others would call you weak for that, but I think in actuality that's what makes you stronger. Being able
to. A lot of men have grown up in households where that was the narrative that they grew up with. Though, like
absolutely,
don't cry, be tough, man up. So if that's all you've known, like, how do you break out of that? I mean, I know as a psychotherapist, we work through, core beliefs about self and cognitive distortions and redefining what being a man is for you, right? If you take away all these things that people have told you, what do you feel like from your own intellect, your own opinions? But how do you think, how can a man break out of that though?
I think it's well, for me, the great philosopher Mahatma Gandhi said it, be the change you wish to see. I mean, how often do you see a 6'2", 250-pound black man on stage in tears? Doesn't happen often.
No.
But when I'm up there and something pulls me to that point, and the gentleman in the audience goes, damn, like I'm feeling just like that. If he can do it, maybe I can do it. So I got to lead by example.
Yeah.
And when you hit me with this, you too tough to cry, you're too macho or whatever, I got to set them straight. Like, nah, that's not really it. You hiding behind something now.
Right.
I'm still tough. Like we can get it cooking whenever you want to, but I'm gonna feel bad after. I might cry after. You know what I'm saying? Like we don't have to hide behind this machismo thing. You don't have to defend yourself with your fists all the time or the aggression all the time, because that's the most readily identifiable emotion for us is anger, and that's what we constantly resort to. But it's not really anger. That's just the first one we go to.
Right.
You think what I'm saying? So
absolutely. I'm gonna play this clip that I found. You probably seen it already. I played it on my Instagram page too. We try to set it up here and take some stuff off of here so we can play it. Hold on a second here.
Nah, everything good. I promise you. Well, we should get together for some drinks, man. For real, for real. But man, I'ma holler at you, man. Let me get out of here. So I like to schedule a session.
So, the clip I just that I played was from the Black Men's Project, I believe is what it's called. And it was highlighting visually what it looks like for some men when they're going through or having in a moment and starting to feel depressed, and mood regulation, loss of libido, loss of interest in things that they've normally wanted to do, increase substance use, increase sexual activity. A lot of the things that we sort of will classify, well, he ain't SHIT. And I made me start really rethinking a lot of times when we're looking at men's behavior, that some of it could be that they're really depressed, and that they're not in a good place. And then some of the things that we know is that 20% of most Black Americans are more than likely going to experience some kind of serious mental health problem compared to the rest of the population. So all of these things, right? If you think about that, there's no way that men are going to be exempt from experiencing these things. And they're also the least likely the ones to go get therapy.
Yep. Therapy has this crazy stigma in our culture that says you crazy, something ain't right. You know what I'm saying? And people don't view it as a chance to expand and grow. And I think once we've taken an opportunity to dive into that, with our podcast, it's kind of, listen, you don't have to. You can start there. Start with hearing this about yourself, or hearing people who look like you, who go through the things you go through, talking about it. And it's like, oh, it ain't just me. And I think that's what kind of opens the door. I mean, we've had so many amazing responses from people. People hit us up every single day, like, yo, you guys kind of peeled me off the ceiling with this episode. Like, I was going through this. I had no idea that other people was going through it too. You spoke my mind. And it's very refreshing, because we're genuinely, as selfish as I can say, that we're doing it for us in hopes that other people pull something from it. But this is actually what we're doing to help ourselves. And the fact that other people are pulling things from it and helping themselves be better is something that we don't take for granted.
I often, wonder, about what we can do as a community. And I think a lot of it is more spaces, more conversation, more normalizing it. Because a lot of men are hurting. A lot of men, I think, are just not in a great place. So I had talked with my son about coping strategies. And, a lot of times the disconnection from I'm not feeling good, or I'm not in a good place, or my thoughts are not necessarily positive. And then what am I doing to deal with that? From like drinking, smoking weed, having sex, different things that I know a lot of us don't look at as a way to cope with stress. So how have you, as a Black man, done that? Or what do you think are some of the things that are specific challenges that Black men face when it comes to seeking mental health support?
I think our biggest issue is fear of judgment.
Yeah.
No man wants to feel weak. And I think with therapy, with the stigma of therapy, it feels like, oh, I'm weak, I can't handle this. I mean, most of our biggest responses are, I'll figure it out. Whatever it pertains to, I'll figure it out. And that's our job, to figure it out outside of when it comes to ourselves.
Yeah.
We just suppress it, put it in the back and keep on pushing. And it's just weighing us down and weighing us down and weighing us down. And I think once we've come to terms with the fact that it's okay to talk, that everyone goes through it, that we need more help than we realize, it makes it a little bit easier for us to transition through this. I mean, and if you have a group of like-minded people around you who are actively chasing self-improvement, it makes a great deal of a difference just to have people who are doing the same things you do, or who can encourage you to do and be better. Like, again, my biggest thing is having my circle. Like, I really have a wonderful circle around me. I got a good circle of brothers who are doing well, who are great fathers, who aren't alcoholics or living the street life, and it makes all the difference. I mean, they say you are a a culmination of the 5 people you spend the most time around.
I talk about that. Yes.
So I would love for people to kind of assess that and go, who are the 5 people I spend the most time around? And you can pull attributes from all of them and realize, wow, I do carry those things. And for that 1 or 2 people in that circle that you know aren't carrying the most positive traits, perhaps you need to either remove yourself from them or work together with them to help move in a better direction.
I think circle is important because I had brought on a couple months back a gentleman who I respect a lot, and we talked about loyalty and what that means to Black men, especially, and how the term loyalty has been both beneficial and a hindrance. And when you started talking about your circle and looking at your circle and depending on who's in the right place versus who's not, sort of trying to help people or removing yourself. And I wonder how some of our cultural norms, like loyalty, for instance, plays into people making those choices because they want to be loyal. That's their homeboy. They've known them for forever, and they get themselves into situations because of loyalty.
Yeah, again, so it's a matter of the perception of loyalty, because there are 2 different ends of it. But again, in my circle, there's some solid brothers. So the loyalty is pulling my brother up. It's never dragging him down, ever. Maybe we were younger because we didn't know any better. But now as we've evolved into our adult lives, like it's constant, like we got to do better here. We got to do better here. This is an opportunity I have. You should join me on this. This is an opportunity I have. You should join me on this. How you think about that? Like we're always feeding this different outlook and different positivity into each other. So it's a way to kind of move us in a better direction. Even my homie who doesn't want to start therapy now is more open to talking to us. And that's the start. You got to start somewhere. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and what's making me think about the clients, or at least I have a lot more men who have said, what's the point of talking about it? What's talking about it going to do? What's your thoughts on that? And what are some things that you could possibly say to someone, a man who's like, what's the point of talking about it?
I think oftentimes when we can put it out loud, when we can say it out loud, it hits a little bit different. When you can sit back and go, I just went through this experience. Now let me self-reflect in this experience and say what I did. And when you can go, wow, I really hurt that girl because I was too stubborn to listen. Like it makes a big difference. No one intentionally likes to hurt people, but when you know that what you've done has impacted someone in a negative light, it really does open your eyes to, well, maybe I do have some things bottled up in me that I need to get off my chest. And we don't realize that a lot of the stuff that a lot of decisions we make and actions that we do or display now stem from a traumatic past or from a previous experience. And we don't even realize that how we're conducting ourselves is because of such and such that happened 15 years ago. We don't even realize that. And I think it's a huge part of being able to sit back and assess ourselves and go, damn, like I hurt some people, or I hurt myself, or I could have made a better choice. And when you can say that out loud and you can hear it and you actually do something about it, it makes all the difference.
I mean, as a psychotherapist, I agree with it. I think it takes a level of courage to self-reflect and hold yourself accountable, and to give people in your circle permission to hold you accountable too. I think that right there shows that you ready to change. But I think one of the hardest things for people to acknowledge is sometimes they don't want to change, and that they don't want to take on this new information and actually evolve. A lot of people like to just do a lot of BSing. They, talk a good game, but when it really comes down to it, they're not ready to change yet.
Oh yeah, that mirror cold-blooded. That mirror is cold-blooded. So when you got to be a brave man and look into it and accept the truth about yourself. But I think the biggest part of it is men tend to justify it. We'll give ourselves 1,000,001 different excuses as why that can't be true until it happens again and again and again. And sometimes that again and again is then put you in a hole that sometimes it's very hard to dig yourself out of. You know what I'm saying? So people, I tell my son all the time, like, people teach you how to treat them. And I think that's an easy way for for us to look at it and go, what did I teach this person about myself? What did I teach them about me? Like, so now I did this, so now they think that this is how I conduct myself, or this is how I am. And that's a good way to kind of open your mind up. What did you teach this person about you based on your previous experiences?
I like that. So did you teach this person about how to treat you based on how
Right.
you're showing up?
Right.
I like that. I like that. So we talked a little bit about just your thoughts around self-care, mental health. What have been some of your wins, or your moments of like self-reflection that maybe have shown up in your poetry?
Whew, that's a tough one. For one, I think being able to share a stage with my children, and my children getting paid for poetry when they, they're just accompanying their father is a win for me. Like, it's probably one of my proudest moments today is, when they fly you and your kid across the country to perform on a TV show. She got 2 people doing her hair, 3 doing her makeup. You know what I'm saying? And they pay her some money. She got her own personal tutor. It's a super proud moment for dad. We did that. We did that poem hundreds of times. And it wasn't until I watched it on television where I got teary-eyed.
Oh yeah,
and it's like, damn, look at my baby. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And now my boys, like, we'll go to different things, and my daughter and I, we don't do it anymore because she's a little older now. So we used to do the poem. My boys would go to the show with us, and it got to a point where we didn't have a poem together with my sons, so they would just come on stage and smile and be cute, and everybody would clap for. They had to get their applause too. You know what I'm saying? So that's a proud moment in that. But poetry is just one of them things where, like, you got to kind of do it, find the rooms, do what you do, and then allow the people to find you. And that's kind of how it's happened for me. Like, it's really been one of them things where I got into a space, I poured my heart out on stage, and somebody, like, that's how it started for me. I was going through a breakup in college. I read a poem at an open mic on campus. I was 19 years old. A gentleman walked up on me, he shook my hand, he said, "I'm 55 years old, and you said something I've been trying to say my entire life." And I remember being like, wow, like, if my sadness and sorrow was empowering somebody, then I'm on to something. So I went back every week and read another sad ass poem. And at the end of the month, dude was like, "Yo, you don't got nothing positive going on in your life?" And I was like, "Oh," and that's kind of how it changed and shifted. And then it kind of just took off. But poetry has been a blessing for me. And there's been so many wins that have come in ways that I couldn't even imagine. I've literally gone all over the world because of a poem. When I say the world, I'm talking about 12-hour flights to do poems. You dig what I'm saying? So it's been an absolutely incredible journey. And it's funny you mention that, because right now my therapist says, what she called me? She said I'm was it a walking contradiction?
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was. She was just saying, she was like, you don't trust yourself, because I'm in this turmoil, right? I'm in this space right now where I'm debating whether or not I want to just take a step back from my 9 to 5 and literally do poetry, motivational speaking full time. But I have this fear of jumping. But I keep telling her, like, I'm like, yeah, I bet on myself all the time. Like, I'm always gonna win. But I'm afraid to take this jump. Like, why? And we're trying to decipher that right now. So it's too funny.
That's pretty dope, because that was basically where we're going next, right? Thank you for the segue.
Okay.
Was the bet on self moment. So this show is a bet on self moment. I remember being in COVID and sort of thinking about wanting to do a radio show, but thinking I didn't have enough time. I had already jumped to be in private practice, working 100% for myself, which is now going on my 4th year of being completely 100% self-employed.
Shout out to you.
So I could talk to you about jumping for real. But looking at, what else do I want to do and how else do I want to make an impact? And yes, I want to expand the practice and start hiring additional clinicians to work in the practice. But at the time, it was like, okay, I can only take so many more clients. And so this was a manifestation of, one, dealing with my grief, because my father loved when I was on the radio. And this is not my first radio. A lot of people don't realize I've been on several other radio stations before I got to the Urban Heat.
Okay.
And he used to he drove for the city of Boston for the elderly commission. So he would have all of the, elders on his shuttle bus, driving them to their various appointments, picking them up. And he would play me while I was on the air in the morning doing the morning show on another radio station. And it was a proud moment for him. He used to love hearing my voice on the air. So he told me, he said, baby, I think you found something. He was like, you didn't try a lot of things. He said, but you sound really good. You sound really good. He's like, you sound like you are natural. He's like, I listen to radio all the time. So I was like, you really think I'm good at it, Dad? He's like, you should stay with that. Of course, as most things, we don't always listen to our parents. So I didn't stick with it. But when he passed away, it was like, maybe I should start doing a show. I didn't know what I wanted the show to be about or how I wanted to frame it. And during COVID, this whole idea of conversations with a therapist and how to normalize it, make it not seem so intimidating. When I went into social work, the whole idea was I was going to be myself. I was going to bring all of Lakeisha to it, and I was going to change what you thought a therapist looked like. I was going to be sister, friend, auntie, sister, cousin, big sister, almighty. Like I was bringing all my sister soldier with me, right?
No doubt.
I was going to be totally me. So I was like, how do I bring that to radio too? And just, this is what it's like sitting with a therapist. It's like, it's just a conversation. Absolutely. It is not, I hate that they call us shrinks because I really don't know why. I think that is an archaic name that when they actually was trying to shrink people's brain and do all these weird experiments on people, that's where that shrink came from. I don't know what they was thinking about back then when they was doing some of those psychiatric experiments on people. But I think that's where the word shrink is kind of coming from. They put your head in stuff and do things to you. I don't do that. It's literally a conversation. You don't have to be afraid.
And that's how it started for me. Here's the weird thing about my transition in therapy. So I started the therapy process with an actual therapist, with someone I knew, friend of the family, who was kind of close to family, knew my people. And I felt comfortable with this person because they kind of knew who I was and I was able to get some stuff off. But then as we progressed and it started to get real,
right,
the comfort became a barrier for me. And it was like, it was because they're so close, because they knew who I was and knew my people. Like I kind of felt myself pulling back from sharing certain information in fear of judgment. Okay. But I'm like, oh, they've helped me so far, but I think this is the line for us. I can't go any further. So I looked for a new therapist that didn't know me. So I could just put it all out on the table now. So I didn't have that reservation of that comfort.
Yeah, you don't know me. I'm gonna tell you all my dirt.
Right. The comfort is what walked me in the door, made me comfortable. But then it was that comfort turned into a discomfort because I don't know, it's weird. But now my therapist now, like I'm putting it all on the table. Like, here you go, you can hold that. Like, you know what I'm saying? You hold that. Like, I gotta get this out. Here you go.
Now I released it.
Yeah. Now you do what you will with that.
You psychoanalyze that and tell me what you think. But
So I think for people who are adverse to it, maybe starting the way I did and with someone close to you who can put you at ease in the beginning and then progress into a space where, I mean, I don't know how, if they're like me and didn't want to tell anything, but they can progress to a point where it's like, you know what, you've helped me find my pocket of comfort in therapy. Now I'm ready to really fly. Let these, you know what I mean? So let these wings open up and tell my story.
I think that's a good point. I always encourage people to realize that where you start or who you start your journey with might not be who you progress with it going forward. And I, as a therapist, I'm able to understand that a lot easier with my clients sometimes than I can with people. Or like people in my circle that, I'm not going to always be a part of every piece of your journey. So you need to be able to be okay with the transitions of things. And I think that's hard for people. Even now, when I talk about you may not need therapy for forever, or we'll reassess in 3 months. A lot of people have a hard time. Wait a minute, you're gonna try to end? I'm like, you may really need to, though. You might need to go to someone else. I might have to, graduate you out, and you might need something different, and that's okay. So think that's
And I
pretty
think
dope.
that's an honorable move on behalf of the therapist too, being like, you know what, this is the point where you need to move on. And I think that's an honorable thing, because sometimes it's just about the money and not really healing the person. And I think if they can recognize that and be like, you know, we got to this point, I think it's time for you to keep reaching out. I think that's awesome.
Or even take a moment to pause and sort of take everything you've learned and start to go out in life and practice it and see what it's like to not come every week and have to figure out some things on your own. And I'm always here. You know what I mean? You can always circle back if you need to. But I think that's really great. I think that's a great point. So as
one
we
of the
get
things
ready,
for me is I always leave my therapist. I'm like, I want to leave with some homework after every session. I want to leave with some homework that's applicable right now.
Yeah.
And there's always a challenge for me or an assignment or something for me when I leave. Every time we get off the call.
That's good. I'm a big homework person too.
Yeah.
I think you have to have those bridges in between sessions for you to ponder, practice.
Yep.
So ponder and practice. You need to ponder and practice in between every session. So can you believe it? We only got like 10 more minutes. 9 more minutes. I know, went by fast.
Yeah, it did.
So shout out to everybody who's been tuned in. You are listening to another episode of Conversations with Coach La. I have Chief the Poet on. You guys know he'll be here in Boston, Massachusetts for Poet Therapy 12, right here at Slade's Bar and Grill. You can still get tickets on Eventbrite. Also gonna have 365 Dad Marv Neal's gonna be co-hosting it. We have D Ruff, who's also, if you can feel it, if you can speak it, if you can feel it. So he's gonna be helping me host. It's gonna be a great night. We're doing an ode to fatherhood. So please come out and support and take some pictures. Come see your favorite around the way therapist in person. So I'm thinking about how we can end this to make it for all of the listeners that are tuned in on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. Thank you so much for tuning in every week. As you guys know, the Urban Heat is Boston's only Black-owned radio station on iHeartRadio, which is something we're very, very proud of.
That's what's
so up. You got people listening through iHeartRadio as well. So think about this. I got 2 questions. The first one is, what role do you think the community plays in supporting mental health and self-care among Black men? And how can we foster more networks? Because you mentioned a lot about having a place to go. What do you think we can do as a community?
Oh man, there's so many different things we can do as a community. I think one would be just understanding that there is an unspoken heavy that a lot of us carry that just needs to be understood. We carry so much, and I think just having a little bit more compassion to what we go through on a daily, that again goes unspoken. Like the stuff that you see on the front page is just the tip of the iceberg. But there are so many layers underneath that we are still sorting through and managing through. And I think giving us that little bit of grace might make a world of a difference. When you ask how we're doing and we start to tell you, listen, because once you've got us talking, it's a good thing. And some of us might unload on you and not even realize it. But if you feel that happening, just kind of keep prompting those questions to get us talking. Once you've got a Black man talking, you're helping him move in a better direction. Oftentimes the how you doing is real quick and in passing and not sincere. Take an opportunity to sincerely ask how we're doing, and it might make a world of difference. Yeah. Sincerely, just checking in. Like we don't, and it's crazy because on my podcast, we start our podcast with a check-in all the time. And I always feel like the listeners don't want to hear us talking about our days for the first 20 minutes of the podcast, but it's important to us to check in and make sure we're all doing okay. So that check-in. I think
that's so important and so profound. And that, again, doesn't require money.
No.
It doesn't require you to do anything but just to pause and actually be curious and interested in another person. Yeah. And I mean, I know that goes a long way even for women. is when you call people, actually check on folks. We have a tendency to just call people when we need them for something, right? But I challenge everybody listening to this podcast. I know there's a lot of people tuned in on Instagram. Is the 5 people, like you said, that you engage with, just call them and ask them just what Chief said. How are you?
Right.
And give them 15 minutes of your time to just check in with them.
And
you don't need anything. You don't need
and most
anything.
of us will say, I'm good, I'm straight. He's like, are you sure? Yeah, I'm good. Like, well, if anytime you want to talk, let me know. And just keep repeating that. And eventually that one day, it's like, you know what, bro? I have been going through some stuff where, been a little heavy lately or whatever. And it makes a world of difference.
Absolutely. I challenge myself to make sure, if the last time I called somebody was to get them to do something, and even if I do need them to do something, I remind myself, I haven't called to just say, hey, I'm going to call and just say, hey, how you doing? Especially if it's not an emergency situation. Don't always let those phone calls be just that. Secondly, if you're the person that's always venting, because I'm guilty of this.
Yeah.
Taking up the airtime, recognize that, and chill and actually turn it back around and check in with the other person.
Or even a simple, hey, bro, just checking on you, hoping everything is well. Holla at you. Those text messages go a long way, man. Hey, you popped up on my spirit, man. Just making sure everything's good with you.
Yeah.
Go a long way.
You'd be surprised how many people come to therapy, and that's one of the first things that they say. No one ever checks on me. Yeah. No one ever asks me how I'm doing. If I need people, there's nobody there for me when I need somebody to talk to, but I'm always there to listen to everybody else's stuff.
That check on your strong friend stuff is real.
Yeah. Shout out to everybody on Instagram. I see y'all. Mindful and Melanated. I see you, sis. Thank you for checking in. You guys have been listening to the Urban Heat, 98.1 FM, Boston's only Black-owned radio station on iHeartRadio. And this is Coach La, your favorite around the way therapist, checking in with Mr. Chief, the poet.
No.
Yes, I was gonna play the track Poe Therapy, just to give y'all a little taste of what made me fall in love with Chief.
That'll be dope. That'll be dope.
One of my faves.
I used to do the radio too. I've always been an R&B head, man. So I worked at the college radio station playing the late night love joints for a while. It was dope.
My favorite. Y'all need to go listen to the album. I just wanted to give y'all a little bit. Shout out to DJ Wade. He did some real cool ad libs or whatever they do, mixes. So now that is like after people go up on stage, you're gonna really like this.
Oh,
he
that's
plays
cool.
This little thing where he blends it all together and goes poetic therapy. He does this little
that's
thing.
Cool.
He uses that as the clip.
That's super cool.
So yeah, we are excited to see each other on. See you. Yes, you. That's
I'm
listening.
excited to see you.
Yes, come on.
And
through.
them too. Yeah. Word.
Pull up. It's gonna be a great time. Oh, we got 10 dope poets that are coming through to share their different odes to fatherhood. I mean, that's not all we're gonna do poems on. They have about 4 or 5 minutes a piece. They'll do something on fatherhood, something on something else. But bring your special guy out. Men, I think it's men matter. It gives you a 50% off discount on tickets, so you can still get that. Of course, you better get tickets at the door, but they will be more at the door. So you want to try to get these tickets beforehand. We got some VIP tables that'll be decorated for you and your people. If you get a VIP table, comes with some cocktails, special cocktails, and an appetizer, but that is a VIP table. Y'all still can get those. We got about 4 or 5 of those that you can still get. So you guys want to come through? It's gonna be a good time, Chief.
Fire. Yes.
Thank you. I am super excited and blessed to have you come through. Keep doing what you're doing.
For sure.
And I know I'm gonna see you on Friday.
We 5 days away.
As we close out. Anything you want to say to the people?
Check on your people. Let them know you care. Let them know you're there. Help them be a better person. Help yourself be a better person. And remember, the mirror is cold-blooded, but it is also your best friend.
Ain't that the truth? Listen, it's been a great night on Conversations with Coach La. Y'all need to make sure y'all come through on Friday. It's going to be a good time. 6 o'clock. Doors open. Show starts at 7.
Word.
And there we go. There goes the disclaimer.
Expect the unexpected. Unorthodox radio from Boston and beyond. Heat.a1fm.com and IR Station.
Good night, everybody. See y'all Friday. Bye,
Friday.
Chief.
Peace.